Welcome to the Captain's Run. We have an absolutely jam-packed show today. That is right. We've got all the topics in rugby league, but we've got the great Kieran Foran joining us from 1 till 2. And then from 2 till 3, we've got Justin Horo. You will not believe how stacked this show is. I don't think we've ever had such a stacked show in all our life. I feel like Kieran Foran is almost out of place. He's too good of a footy player. What is he doing on this show? Now that it's called the Resi Run, make sure SEN 1170 in Sydney, SENQ 693 in Brisbane, SEN 1620 on the Gold Coast. Listen live on the SEN app. You can get some of the best, not some of the best, you can get the best rugby league shows in the nation on the SEN app, whether it's Fletch, whether it's myself, whether it's Matty Johns, you name it, on the SEN app you can get it. So make sure to download the SEN app at the store or the Google Play Store, at the App Store or the Google Play Store. Listeners, belatedly, they can tune into the podcast, Apple, Spotify, or where all good podcasts are downloaded. We have a huge show today, as I said. Now, look, the bigwigs want this. They come to me, they sat me down, they said, Dan, if you don't do this, you're fired. And I said, whoa, well, it's an aggressive kind of entry to a day. But they said, Kempy, we need you to speak about the head-high crackdown. And I said, I'm sick of speaking about the head-high crackdown. I feel like you just say the same thing every time. It sucks, but I understand why it's there. So this is what we're going to do. Text 0457 736 736. I want to talk about who's the best signing been so far this year. But the big wigs here, they want me to talk about the head-high crackdown. So text in. You tell me what you want me to talk about. The head-high crackdown or who's been the best signing so far this year. 0457 736 736. I'm a man of the people, so whatever the people say is what I'll do. The great Maestro, how you going, brother?
Very, very well, Kempy. What an opening.
Oh, thank you.
You got me fired up sitting in here, mate. So
how good.
To it.
Your glorious leader. Your glorious leader, they say. And not in a dictatorship kind of way, in a democracy kind of way.
That's right.
Democracy manifest. Matter of fact, I saw an article earlier how Reed Marnie had a succulent Chinese meal with Serraldo. That was their first meeting, and it reminded me of that great meme. Get your hand off my...
Yeah. Remember when Gus got caught on the CCTV that got leaked with him and Billy Kickow, the Chinese restaurant at the Canterbury Leagues Club?
Yeah.
It seems to be, it's repeat offenders, the Bulldogs.
It absolutely, repeat offenders. Now, guys, also don't forget the brand new 2025 Bloke jersey, the most in-demand design we've ever had, which is the blue and the yellow V with the blue design with the collar. That is coming out April the 22nd. So not next week, but the week after. Tuesday, 6 p.m. Limited amount. You guys listening, everyone sees the Bloke jerseys everywhere. They're going to be on bloke.shop. And they'll be April the 22nd on Tuesday, 6 p.m. Set your alarms. We have sizes up to 6XL, all the way down to small, and get your hands on. As you always see them around the grounds and everything like that, this is your opportunity to get your hands on them. They always sell out. We've never had a year where the jerseys haven't sell out, and this has actually been our most in-demand year ever when it comes to design. All right, we've got 1,000 texts come in. Best signing has my vote. Kempy, love the show. Great interview with Timmy Zoo on YouTube. Was a great watch. Thank you. Best signing, hands down. Best signing. Yeah, I mean, I told you I could feel what the people wanted. The bigwigs. Now, listen, if I get fired, this is on you guys. All right, the best signing. We prepared for this because we knew the people wanted it. So here's some signings this year. We've got Terrell May, Zach Lomax, Clint Gutherson, Benny Hunt, Jerome Luai, Satili Tupanua, Damien Cook, Val Holmes, Iongi, Humphreys, Ethan Standers, Adam Fanor-Blake at the Sharks. Now, this is a really interesting one because there are intangible things that someone brings to a club, and then there are hard facts and data that you can look at and see. The text lines are absolutely flying through. All of it says we want to do the signings. Okay. Now, in regards to hard facts and data that you can look at, you can watch, anyone can watch and just go, this guy's impact has been nothing short of incredible. This guy has gone to another level. Matter of fact, this guy has gone from a player that was in probably the second tier in his position, skyrocketed into the top tier at the moment form-wise. And you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Terrell May. This guy has gone to a whole nother level at the Tigers. So if you're looking at pure impact and stats on the field, the way they're playing, you would look at Terrell May and you would say absolutely. So much so, he has skyrocketed it into New South Wales selection discussions. Maybe he will start for New South Wales with Payne Haas. I'm not sure. At the very least, he'd have to be in the squad. So I would have to say right now, off the top of the dome, it's Terrell May. But then you start looking at intangibles, things that they brought to the club in the preseason, leadership. Now, Luai has been statistically relatively quiet, but you can't tell me that the Tigers don't look like a marginal, it's like by a huge margin, a better side. So you can look at those two and go, okay, yep, some of the best signings so far. But I've got to say, I look to, and this is not just because he's a good-looking bloke, but I look to a guy like Humphreys, and I ask myself, where would South have been to start this season if Humphreys wasn't there? You know, the guys that they initially signed to play in those key positions, you know, have taken a bit longer than they probably expected, haven't stood out as much as they probably would have thought, and Humphreys has exploded out of nowhere, where some people thought he was going to be a 9, then people thought he'd have a good utility on the bench. All of a sudden, he's their main man in the halves. Now, granted, he got injured last game, but I would have to say he's up there. In regards to, you know, another way you can measure it is like you've got Tigers team players, like, so for example, you've got Terrell May, Jerome Luai. The team together has been playing well, so Tigers have been playing well. Then you've got people like Iongi, who the Eels have not been playing well, and Iongi, every single game, except for maybe one, has been one of their best players. And that's a very special trait. It's one thing to be a good player when your team's playing good, but do you play good footy when your team's playing bad? That makes you a great player. So far, Iongi's off to a great start. Adam Blake, he's almost in this kind of curse situation where how do you get any better than what you were before? So he's gone to the Sharks and continued to do what we know he can do. He's one of the best on the field all the time. So it's almost like flown under the radar how good he's played. Whereas if any other player went and just appeared and started nailing his stats that you see every single week for the Sharks, we'd be sitting here ranting and raving going, unbelievable signing. So Adam Blake, he's also done his job. But a guy that I think, you know, probably isn't going to get the raps that he may deserve because they're not going as well. But I think Gutho's been outstanding for the Dragons in regards to individual performance. And then you've got Zach Lomax, who, outside of maybe one game, could not have done more to help his team win. I would love to hear who you think the best signing so far has been, Maestro.
I've got to go with you. I think it's Gutho on. I don't think the Dragons would be anywhere close. I think they'd be down with the Eels without him. Is that a fair comment on the back of what has happened so far? I know they were beaten by Parramatta on the weekend, but I could see that team being a lot less rounded, lacking a little bit of leadership if he had not come into the club and made the impact he has. Because Damien Cook and Val Holmes, the two other signings alongside him, I don't think have made that sort of impact to this point.
I think that if the Gutho doesn't sign with the Dragons, you're right, they probably haven't won a game this year.
That's it.
Like, genuinely probably haven't won a game this year. That's how important he's been. He's been so important that he's basically the number 7, but number 1.
Yep.
Like, that it's his team, pretty much. And that's what the Dragons find themselves in this tough position is when the game's on the line, there's only so much you can do from fullback, and you need your halves to step up and make the plays. And unfortunately, they haven't stepped up and make the plays so far this year at the Dragons. Now, let's talk about some undercover signings. One for me. First of all, we're going to have to mention Fisher Harris, but we'll get to him. This is the intangible. That's the intangible chat. One for me, though, is Aaron Clark. Aaron Clark. Not a big signing. Not many people talked about it. But if you actually watch the Warriors, he has been phenomenal for them. And finally, a coach has said, come to my club. I'm going to put you at 13, and I want you to just go on and rip and tear as much as you can, rather than tossing in between number 9, off the bench and all that stuff. Put him at 13, let him rip and tear. Aaron Clark has been outstanding. Now, intangibles. We spoke about it earlier with Luai. Now, Fisher Harris, that's what he was bought for. Now, he can absolutely give you a really good game where he's one of the best players on the field. But it's the intangibles. I think it's the Kiwis call it the spirit that Fisher Harris has brought to that side. Because I'd argue the Warriors haven't played well, but they're still winning games. Whereas the Warriors of just last year, when they don't play well, they lose by a lot, and they're not in the games. Whereas the Warriors of this year, when things aren't going their way, when the ball's not bouncing their way, they're still fighting for each other. And that's what Fisher Harris was brought for. Then you look at some of these incredible young guys coming through. Ali Latawa, Halasima. Then you've got the Laban that hasn't played much this year, but it's an absolute gun. Then you've got, he changed his name, Bayunga, I think it is now. We'll get the correct name. We'll get Maestro to get the correct name. You've got some of the best young forwards in the competition. Who do you want leading them? you want James Fisher-Harris. You want a guy that was the spiritual leader of the forward pack, arguably the greatest ever team we've ever seen, which was James Fisher-Harris. He is now in his homeland. He is now leading some of the most naturally gifted players in the competition when it comes to young players coming through. And not only is he there to win a comp for the team, he's there to win a comp for his country. It's different for him, and that's what I find so special about the signing of Fisher-Harris. I actually thought it was going to take longer for the impact of Fisher-Harris, but we've seen it already. Imagine in 2 or 3 years when those young guys are really learning the tiny details that Fisher-Harris can teach them in regards to preparation, in regards to leadership, in regards to mental toughness. So there's actually been quite a lot of signings that have been pretty good. Matter of fact, I'd argue most big signings have been good. We haven't even spoken about Ben Hunt, and you could argue that was one of the bigger ones in regards to, I guess, profile. And Ben Hunt at the Broncos, it almost, like, I'll still say this, and I know being a Bronco fan and a former Bronco, it's probably wrong for me to say, I don't know how they got him for $600K. Whenever I see him and Reynolds on the field, like, okay, let's say, Reynolds has a really good first half, and then he goes off the field, and then, like, Reece Walsh or Ben Hunt kicks a 40-20. I'm like, that's a joke. Like, Reynolds off the field, and now Ben Hunt takes over? Like, what are we talking about here? So Ben Hunt's also been phenomenal. I also think Ben Hunt's defense has improved quite a bit this year at the Broncos. So I would love to know, 0457 736 736, who is your signing of the year? Who is your signing of the year? We've got some texts here. What about Hubner as a best signing from the Dolphins? He's been bloody good. I talk about, like, bang for buck. He's been great. What about the Nicholson, the Pommy back row from the Raiders? He's been phenomenal. Dylan Walker's first game for the Eels, also outstanding. And so it really has been one of these years where, like, sometimes you get a season where the signings go and it's almost like a dud. They happen, doesn't seem to work out. Where I'd argue most signings, like I'm looking at it now, most big signings have been successful, or at the very least have been solid. I'm not looking at any signings and going, it's really been, like, any big signings and said, oh, it's been a dud, it's definitely not working. Unless, Maestro, can you think of anyone?
Not off the top of my head, Kempy. I was helping you put this list together this morning, and, when we're looking at guys like Jackson Paulo, that's how far down we're going the list.
Yeah. So, and, that's almost like a fringe first grader.
Exactly right.
Saifidi's been great for the Dolphins. He was in our team of the week last week. And this is where you go, this is the salary cap working, finally. We're seeing teams like the Tigers get a few wins. We're seeing teams that are at the bottom of the table, and we're seeing some of the top-tier teams finally struggle because they're losing key players. So I'd actually argue right now that we're seeing actually evidence of the salary cap working. And granted, the pessimists and the cynics right now are saying, Kempy, as well as anyone, by the end of the year, the top teams will be where they're supposed to be and they'll all fall apart. I would argue the Bulldogs right now, did anyone predict 5-0 to start the season? Did anyone predict the Tigers would go so well to start the season? Like, I think there's quite a few teams that have overachieved so far this year. And I think that's a lot down to key signings and the salary cap pressuring players on to move to other clubs. And so I think that's a good thing. Now, does that mean it's going to last for the whole season? Maybe not, but let's enjoy it while it's here. Let's enjoy it. Let me know in the comment section, guys. Let me know in the text, who is the signing of the year? If I had to make a call right now, signing of the season so far, obviously we've got the whole year to go, it would be Terrell May. Terrell May has so far been the best signing. He's been incredible. I think if they got him for $700K, they are sitting there going, thank you, the footy gods. That's unders right now for Terrell May, how good he's been. We're going to head to a break. After the break, we've got plenty more to get to. We've got Kieran Foran joining us later in the show. We've got the Scope joining us. We've got a little bit of talk about the head-high crackdown, and then plenty more after that. Welcome back to the Captain's Run, brought to you by the Bloke Club. That is right. Join the Bloke Club, www.bloke.club, completely free. And if you join, you go in the draw automatically with no strings attached to win a Mazda BT50, thanks to Luke Camilleri and Aspley Mazda. Give him a follow on Instagram. He's the best in the business when it comes to car, LDC_01. And he's got deals going all the time on his Instagram. All right, let's get into it. Desi Hasler, he thinks the sin bins are ruining the integrity of the game.
This is in no ways a whinge, so don't take it the wrong way. We were well beaten tonight. The first 10 minutes, and it happened to Tino tonight, and I feel for any other side that it might happen to. Like, people pay good money to come and see a game of footy. I just think it's and just interferes with the integrity of what the game's about.
There you have it. Now, it's actually interesting because there was a real, and look, granted, it was completely different. It was a Reece Walsh with Suoli where it really actually killed the bloke. But so there was a real talk around this around Origin. And granted, as I said, it was a little bit different because I just think that was a send-off every day of the week. But it's the same principle. And it's basically saying, okay, we've got this problem in the game, and it's a serious problem. It's our number one problem. It's head knocks. And if we don't take care of it, it's going to hurt the game dramatically in going forward. But also, the punishment we're using for this problem is negatively impacting the game right now. So to save ourselves pain in the future, we're giving ourselves pain now. Is there a way to save ourselves pain in the future without giving ourselves pain now? Because I tend to agree that this just, being a former player, it's very, and look, I'm not putting blame on the referees because they're the ones being told to do this. I promise you, I can't guarantee it, but I'd be willing to bet the house on. If you sat down and spoke to most referees, they would say to you, I don't want to ref the game this way. Now, I don't know that. I haven't spoken to any referees, but I just know that referees are fans of the game, and they grew up watching a game that's very different to the game that's here today. They are told to ref like this from the people above. But I think that we've become too desensitized to the impact of 10 in the bin, where we're just like, all right, yeah, there's a head eye, 10 in the bin, see you later, mate. And we're not actually taking into account that, you work all week as a team to get to the end of the week, to be prepared to win a game of rugby league. It is honestly, it almost feels like life or death at times. That's how dramatic it is internally at a club, whether you win or lose. And it's like, and yeah, I'm being a bit facetious there. It's clearly not factually that, but it is extreme. You get to the end of the week and some dude slips into some other dude's shoulder and you're being punished with 10 in the bin. And so I guess the question is there a way where we can go, okay, we understand that someone slipping into a shoulder is not a good thing, and yes, it's going to happen, but can we punish it in a way that doesn't completely ruin the integrity of the game? Because yes, you can point to some teams that go, okay, if they get 10 in the bin, they're still good enough to defend that error and go on to win the game. But I'm pretty sure most of the time you get 10 in the bin, you're losing that game. I'm pretty sure, unless there are stats that prove otherwise. At the very least, at some point, you are going to have to pay the price for that 10 in the bin. So whether it's, you win that game, but you've exuded so much energy, you've tried so hard with the player down that you tied during the week and then it catches up to you the next week, I'm not sure. I just wonder, and I don't want to talk about 5-minute sin bins because I just don't know whether we'll be able to police that properly. I just think that maybe the idea that, yes, okay, let's say someone slips in someone's shoulder and that player gets a HIA and he can't come back on. I know, it sucks. It really does suck for the team that has that. But that's what we've got the 18th man for. And maybe we go for, you have a forward and a back on the bench as an 18th and 19th man, that if there's a HIA and he can't come back on, they immediately come back onto the bench. But I look at it and I go, okay, could we not just wait for the match review committee with more time, with more video angles, with more resources to punish people accordingly so that, yes, you're still punishing players severely so they don't want to do it, they don't want to head high anyone, but at least you're giving teams the opportunity to prepare the next week with 17 players and no suspensions. 10's in the bin, 10 minutes in the bin. And so I just go, we're hurting ourselves too much now to prevent future pain that may or may not come. And I do agree that we have become too callous and desensitized to 10 in the bin. It is so impactful as a player. It is just like, okay, well, there goes the game. And I just think there's got to be some kind of middle ground, especially the ones, because what I don't get, it's just the clarity of the messaging too. Because I heard, Abdo on NRL 360, he said, forceful contact with no mitigating circumstances. But then on the weekend, I saw 2 blokes get sin bin for moderate contact. And I'm just like, what do we, can we get it clear as to what it is? If it's not forceful and if it's moderate and forceful. And there were also mitigating circumstances in multiple head highs. For example, if I go low on a player and hit him first, and that lowers his height, that should count as a mitigating circumstance. Let's say I'm about to make a tackle and my mate goes low, I don't have time to adjust my height to the guy that's just been hit through the middle and his head drops 5 centimetres. Now, I would get it. If players are shooting out of the line to hit someone hard and they head high someone, that's a different story to a player making a catch tackle where a dude's head has dropped 5 centimetres out of nowhere and he's basically fell into a bloke's shoulder. Or a guy is leaning forward to try and bump someone and he leans his head forward into a shoulder. And so I am all for protection of the head. I really am. There's no denying it at all. It's so important. And honestly, it's the number one priority of the game so far. But can we come up with a better solution than hurting the game's integrity right now than what we currently have? Marshall, I'd love to hear your thoughts, mate.
I think that point you brought there, Kempy, about guys being expected, and Des spoke about this in terms of it's not as simple as guys lowering their target area. That helps, but as you say, when you're making a catch tackle and you're trying to bring someone down, trying to stop them getting that offload away, that's part of your role. You're not shooting out of the line there. And guys are getting sent for that. The other thing is the pressure that's putting on the referees and more commentary coming their way because, as Billy Slater put it during the week, they're expected to be the match review committee almost on the run at the moment. Yeah. And that is not their job. That is not their job.
Yeah, it really is. And I understand the argument of if a player gets head high from my team, why do I get punished if he doesn't come back on the field? But could we, and I know it's not the same, like if you lose a key player and you're bringing on a rookie instead of the key player, I get it. But I just think there's got to be some kind of middle ground. I really do. And people that just go, just lower your point of contact. It's like, have you ever played rugby league? Try lowering your contact on Jason Taumalolo. Yeah. Ask Pia Cora about lowering contact. Not completely out. Like, completely out. I mean, lowering contact on the players today, nearly all of them, like wingers are 100 kilos. It's just not feasible. Like the way contact works in today's game, you're always landing about where their shoulder is because you're trying to wrap the ball up. If you don't wrap the ball up, now, even though I don't want to lower contact to promote a lot of low tackles. So on one hand, the NRL's saying lower contact, but on the other hand, they don't reward low tackles. No. If you go low on someone, they get a quick play the ball. So it's like, okay, as I said, I just think that maybe they need to be harsher in the match review committee for head highs because then they can really look. Like with match review committee, they can look for hours on did someone hit him through the middle? Did his head lower? Were there mitigating circumstances? At the moment, they've got to make decisions so quickly on the game time that, it just happens. It just happens quickly. Anyway, that's my quick spiel. It's only 10 minutes of the whole 3-hour show on the head highs. I don't want to spend any more on it. I'm sick of it. I'm over it. I understand it's there. It's our biggest issue in the game long term. I don't think fines are deterrents. I think not playing is probably the biggest deterrent. But that is all. That is all on head highs. We're going to go to a break and we're past it. And we've got plenty more to talk about, including Adam Reynolds at the Broncos next year. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. We've got a lot of texts here. Read the sin bins. Why can't sin bin player come back on after a try scored against the team? This would stop the blowouts. Regards, Russell. Don't mind that. Don't mind that. Hey, guys, do you think Jacob Preston could wear a sky blue jersey this year? Absolutely, I think he could. And Daly has already come out and said he's not afraid to make changes. Hey, then what do you think about power play? Like ice hockey, give them 10 minutes, but if a team scores a try, player comes back on. That definitely could work for sure. Absolutely. How about the play the balls lately? I've been watching it closely and Noah plays the ball remotely. I hope they don't call it back since no one does them. Yeah, I mean, that crackdown is just pretty much over. Just send everything to judiciary and just send people for 10 if they clearly went in with intent to hurt. Then send them off completely for things like players flying out of the line, flying shoulder someone to the head. Yeah, I think if feet leave the ground and you can see them trying to pull off a big hit but they make contact with the head, I think those ones are pretty clear and obvious. It's the ones where it's just a bloke is literally being hit through the middle and his head slips a little bit. It was just it ended up being a penalty. But Bo Fermor's try-saving tackle, I think, on Katoa as a penalty, what do you want him to do? How can he wrap the ball up? Tell me what tackle technique you could ask Bo Fermor to use to wrap the ball up in that situation. Because if you tackle low, he just slides over the... Anyway, it is what it is. It is what it is. Anyway, we've got 1,000 texts. 0457 736 736. Alrighty. Adam Reynolds, the Brisbane Broncos, facing a salary cap squeeze. I think we could all see this coming, but I don't think people realise this. Over the next 2 years, so this November... people that can sign literally for next year, and also people that become off contract November 1, so they can talk to people for 27. 20 players of the Broncos' top 30 can do that. So there is absolutely a salary cap squeeze, and Adam Reynolds, he was heard speaking on it with the future of the Broncos.
Look after this year first. I've still got a job to do here, so that'll sort itself out in the future. Yeah. No, look, I'm enjoying myself. I still feel like I've got a lot to give, and I've still got a big job to do this year, so I'm not even worried about next year at the moment. Worried about obviously getting my body right for next week and, doing my part for the team and trying to, put us in a good position.
There you go, Adam Reynolds. I mean, the thing is that when he is playing arguably as good as he's ever played. Like, he's been phenomenal the first few weeks of the season. And so I just think that it's going to be one of those situations where Broncos, hopefully they have a good enough relationship with Reynolds where they can almost just say, listen, man, if you play, 22 games, like full games this season, 21, 22, then let's consider talking at the end of the year about getting you and going around another year. I think that if he struggles with niggly injuries all year long and he's, twinges here and tears here and he plays, 15 games, I think they probably just need to bite the bullet and look to move forward because, like, you just can't afford to go into another year worried that a player is going to be, available or not, especially such a key player. And I think the interesting thing with Adam Reynolds is he wrongly has the reputation that he's always injured. It's only been last year that it was his lowest amount of games he'd played in like a decade. All the other years before that, you could argue, the physio helps him a lot, and he's holding a hammy here and there. But if you actually go back and look, especially the last 5 years, he's played 20 or more games every single year, and so he actually isn't in and out as much as people think. And so I just think the key for the Broncos will be, listen, if he can get through 20-plus games this year, as in full games, not like, he comes off every third or fourth, then I think they go, you know what, let's look at going around again. What do you reckon, Maestro?
I completely agree on that point. I think the other thing the Broncos are considering is they don't want to lose him long term, right? As someone who can be a good influence around that place, as I think it's already been shown he is. So how they work that out, they seem to have a working relationship, which is more than Manly Seagulls and Daly Cherry Evans can say. And that puts them in a good position to start with, right? Because the fact of the matter is he's off contract at the end of the year. But as you say, that's a really interesting situation, the Broncos, isn't it, with that amount of players off contract?
Yeah, it's huge. I will say success helps.
Yeah.
And so, it's going to be interesting because 20 players off contract, notoriously Michael Maguire, incredibly hard trainer.
Yeah.
I had a mate.
He probably likes that situation, doesn't he? As the coach,
I'd assume that he's gonna find out who really wants to be there and who doesn't. But at the same time, if they've got success, it's going to be easy to tell people to say. Apparently, one of the boys was asked, did you train hard in this off season? And one of their senior players said, "We don't say hard train. We just say we trained." So very interesting kind of. Almost like a bit of Floyd Mayweather-esque, like all hard work is easy work kind of thing. But it is that Michael Maguire mentality of there is no such thing as hard work, there's just work. But it's a tough balance because not ironically, but funnily enough, and I know Matty the Waterboy, he's here with us, and I hate to bring it up, but the Rabbitohs thought Reynolds was done 3 years ago. And they made the call, and unfortunately it was the wrong one. And so Broncos, yes, it is 3 years further down the track, but they don't want to be stuck in the same situation where they've made the wrong call. They don't want to be stuck in a situation where Kobe Black, this young fellow who's 19 years old, is still not ready for first grade and they rush him in.
How close are you hearing he is, Dennis?
I still think he's quite a couple years.
Okay.
I mean, when I say quite a ways away, I mean maybe,
no one knows for sure, right?
Yeah, like a year or two. I don't think he'd probably be ready to steer the ship next year, especially with such a young. When you actually look at if Hunt isn't there. The Broncos' spine would be Walsh, Mam, Black, Moser, which is super young. Like, Walsh is 22.
Yeah.
Which is insane. And so I just don't know whether the Broncos are ready for that yet. I think they still need a senior player in that spine. But we'll see. We'll see. Father Time is undefeated, though. Father Time is undefeated. We'll see this year. Let's head to a break. When we get back from a break, we'll get into Latrell return against the Roosters and what it means for the rest of the season. The fact that we could see Latrell playing 6 or 7, maybe Cody Walker at 7, Latrell at 6. It could be exactly what the Rabbitohs needed in this time. We'll head to a break. We'll see you on the other side. Welcome back to the captain's run. Latrell Mitchell return. Now, an interesting return because, if you just looked at, without the last play, that he had a couple errors and a few defensive reads or whatever. But again, when the big moment arrived, seriously, the amount of times this bloke has had those big moments, it's absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. And, sometimes I don't think we give our stars enough time to ease their way back into games and matches and seasons. And, I think once Latrell, I know everyone just goes, oh, he's a better centre than fullback. But it's like, mate, he's barely played centre for 3 or 4 years. And so I think, give him time to ease back into that centre role and get used to it. Because I think that he'll, with Jai Gray playing the way he is, it's going to be very hard to justify moving Jai Gray out from fullback. He's currently leading the Dally M's. And so I think the thing is with Latrell, because he's so versatile, you can get the best out of both worlds. You can get him at centre. You can get him to in good ball, roam if he needs to, but then he can have those match-winning plays. But the beauty is he's been moved to 6, and I'm going to be honest, I've actually always been really intrigued to see Latrell at 6. I'd make the argument that for a big fella, he's got the best ball playing I'd have ever seen. Now, GI had decent ball playing, but he was, put it this way, I think GI's ball running is probably the best ball running in the history of the game. But I'd say, ball running wise, he's a bit better than Latrell. But I think actually Trell's ball playing is a little bit better than GI. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think Trell's got a bit to go to compare to GI's career. Granted, he's still only 26 or something like that, so he's got some years to go. So GI for me is still the greatest outside back of all time. But for a big fella, I don't think I've ever seen anyone with as good as ball playing as Trell. You could make the argument of an Isaiah Yeo, but he's more of a forward than an outside back. And so I'm actually really interested to see him at 6. Now, granted, if I'm playing against South, I'm just making Trell do a million tackles and seeing how he handles that. Now, I don't want to be the first or second or third guy that runs at Trell, but I might want to be the 10th, 8th, the 8th, 9th, and 10th guy that runs at Trell. So it's going to be interesting to see what teams do to try and fatigue him. But, if he gets a couple of weeks in there, he'll get his match fitness sorted in a couple of weeks, and it could be really interesting to see how he goes there. So super, super intrigued to see Latrell at 6. And I'm just super intrigued to see the Wayne Bennett-led Rabbitohs. If you ever had a doubt of this guy's brilliance, it is just, I've always said this, we don't have a lack of talent in the NRL. We have a lack of good coaches, and through no fault of the coaches at all. Because when you think about it, where do you go and train to be a coach? Where are there systems all around the country to become a coach? Whereas to become a player, there are systems everywhere. There are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of kids that get funneled through systems where there is millions and millions and millions of dollars all dedicated to making you a good rugby league player. Where's the system for a head NRL coach? There's none. There's literally, it doesn't exist. And so I think that Wayne Bennett is a really good example of that. We actually lack quality coaches, not talent, because this side is essentially the same as last side, the Rabbitohs, last year. You could argue that it's weaker. No Cam Murray. Lockie Ilias initially, you probably would have said this side, Lockie Ilias at his best at starting the season before you knew how good Humphries was going to be, would probably be better with Lockie Ilias in it, and he's not there. They're missing key players for long periods of time, and yet they continue to manage to play good footy. And it's all Wayne Bennett's ability to get the best out of players. And it's a cliche. It's as old as time. But a happy player is a good player. And that's what Wayne does. He knows how to make people feel loved, cared for, and wanted. And then in return, they say, because you care, because you love, I am going to return that to you and say, I'm not going to let you down. I'm not going to let you down. What do you reckon about the South Sydney Rabbitohs, Maestro?
I agree on how they've started the season. I'm really, really interested, as you are, to see how this move goes on the weekend and how it holds up in pressure situations. How long they have to do it is another thing because, as you mentioned, Jai Gray's form has just been out of this world. No one expected that. So how long do they persist with this? Say it goes well for a month. Does Jamie Humphries come back in? Does he give you that extra bit of depth as a 14 now? Suddenly Souths look very, very deep, which I don't think is an observation anybody made before the season.
For sure. I think that when Humphries goes back, he goes to 7, Cody Walker to 6. I think that Bud Sullivan, he's another one that has been really good when he's come on the field. He's played so well that even with 2 small players on the bench, they've continued to carry him as a bench player. And we have to remember, with all the hype around Trell, with all the hype around Gray, guess who the player was that made the show and go, that scored the try that got them back into the match? It was Bud Sullivan. And so, once again, Wayne Bennett working his magic. Who knows? Maybe Bud Sullivan turns out to be the player we all know he could be. You have to remember, here's a text. It's round 17 and going off a bit early about the Bunnies. All right, mate, I want you to read what I just said. Find anywhere where I said they were going to win a premiership or anything like that. Do you find that for me? And I'll give you 50 imaginary bucks because it never happened. I'm going off about their incredible form to start the season. I think all of us, when they had those season-ending injuries, especially Cam Murray, were sitting there going, they are going to struggle to start the year. What are they, 4 from 5?
Yep.
And what's crazy is they haven't even played that well yet, and they're still managing to win. Matter of fact, I think in 4 of their games, they haven't scored more tries than the opposition.
Yeah.
Which is, again, that's what's so impressive about this side. They haven't played well. Their key players have been out, and they've still managed to do what they've done. So, Jai Gray is an absolute revelation. We got the great Kieran Foran on the line, so make sure to text in 0457 736 736. Ask Foz your questions. First of all, welcome to the show, Foz. How you going, brother?
Thanks for having me on, Kempy.
Now, mate, I don't want to embarrass you, but we've got some highlights here. Some audio of some highlights, mate. If you just at your best.
Foran, Brett Stewart, look at that for a play.
Brilliant.
Look at that for a play. That is brilliant stuff by Manly.
That is
Brett
brilliant.
Stewart and Kieran Foran.
Foran, they swing it to the left. Foran! Oh, welcome back to the NRL, Kieran Foran. Foran scores on debut for the Warriors.
Berrells looks left, goes right to Foran, goes flat. Foran, dummied, beats one, got to Kennedy, stretched out and got the try. Oh, Kieran Foran,
The old boy still got it.
294.
Oh, the old boy still got it. Oh, there we go, mate. First of all, mate, I want to ask you, when you hear those early day Manly highlights, how does it make you feel?
Old. Mate, you know what? They were such great days. Being a young bloke involved in that era, in that footy team, was just, it was a dream come true. And honestly, when I listen to that and see the highlights of those days, you just feel blessed that you were involved in, I've said it a number of times, just such a tough footy team, but a skillful footy team, and surrounded by, some of the greatest players that ever played for Manly through that time. So, yeah, very fortunate.
Mate, isn't it that era of Manly sometimes, and I don't say this in a disrespectful way at all, but sometimes get lost in the noise of Melbourne, Roosters. We talk about dominant eras of the last 20 years. There was a Manly period from 7 till about 13 where you were right up there with, it was you and the Storm and pretty much Roosters, really.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. I was chatting with someone the other day about it, and I was saying that we were on such a roll under Desi there after we won the premiership in 2011 against the Warriors, and he obviously made a decision to take up a contract with the Bulldogs the following year. But I truly believe had Desi stayed around and, we'd kept that cohesion and that energy going, there was nothing stopping us from potentially playing in 3 or 4 grand finals in a row. I truly believe that if the side had been able to stay healthy and fit, as you spoke about, Manly and Melbourne at that time, and then the Roosters were coming in, 3 really dominant teams that just happened to find themselves up in the top 4 pretty much each and every year. So, yeah, it was a special time, special era.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember, 2007, 2008 is when it was birthed, because you had that initial 2006-ish rivalry between Broncos Storm, and then 2007-8 was when Manly came in, and I just always remember playing Manly. And as I said, we had the rivalry with Melbourne, but it was you, the Roosters, and Melbourne that we were always like, this is a big game, this is a big match.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, like I came into first grade after obviously those two grand finals in 07 and 8, and I came in midway through 09, and like the genuine rivalry between Manly and Melbourne was it was already born. It was up and running, and mate, the two sides absolutely hated one another. So it was the moment you got given your jersey, you knew what you were in for every time you played them.
Do you reckon there's that hate still? I think there's some. It's coming back to a degree in some sides, but I reckon there was a period where people, like teams, because of social media, and we all knew each other, and everyone says hi to each other. But I feel like we lost that hate for each other, whereas we hated the Melbourne Storm. Like genuinely, we hated them.
I have to agree with you. I reckon it is gone out of the game, and I do believe social media has played a part in that. I feel like. Look, it's brought players together, and everyone chats with everyone, and everyone's mates with blokes from other teams and whatnot. But mate, it was never like that. Like when as I said, in that era, there was genuine dislike. Like blokes didn't want to sit down and have coffee or shake hands with blokes after from other clubs. So yeah, I would say it's. More than likely it's disappeared out of the game, but that's not necessarily a negative thing either.
I remember, please, I'm a winger, so I'm no hero at all. But I remember back in the day, if you were at a club and another team was at that club, you didn't know whether there was going to be a kickoff or there was going to be a shaking of hands. That genuinely was the tension between footy players. And to be fair, most of the time it was a shaking of hands and like, hey, how you going, mate? Whereas these days it's like, it's all good no matter what. It was generally like that back in the day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you weren't too sure if you were going to bump into them on a night out, were you?
Yeah.
And you certainly didn't want to be in the same pub as them if you'd been beaten or something like that. As you spoke about now, it's not uncommon for two teams to bump into each other out and about the night of the game.
Mate, so how's the recovery going from the bicep injury?
Yeah, coming along really well, Kempy. I'm ramping up my strength training and starting to really load the biceps now, and making lots of inroads with it. I'm pushing every boundary I possibly can. It could be potentially my final year in footy, and I certainly don't want to spend it sitting on the sideline. So, I'm working as hard as I can and as thorough as I can to get back on the field and be out there competing with the lads.
And, mate, the Titans, such an interesting side this year. Desi's gone all in on this kind of, I don't want to say new age style, but very Stormish-X, where I say you've got essentially fullbacks in your whole spine. And I don't say that as a disrespectful way, more in an electric way. When they get the ball in hand, they make magic happen. However, it is very different to the traditional, your ball running 6, 7 that gets you around the park, and then a fullback that has a really good 3-on-2. It's genuinely like ball running players. What's it been like to be a part of that?
Yeah, it's been interesting watching it evolve, and I think the guys are doing a great job at it. It's still early on in the year, and they've had pre-season together with one another, albeit we've lost Keanu Kinney. But yeah, you can see that Des has definitely. He's been drawn to the approach of the speed of the Titans, and he wants to maximise and capitalise on that. And look, I like what he's done. I think that Campbell can be a very good 7. I think Brimson can be a great 6, and then you got Kinney at 1. So look, if they can find that balance between, obviously playing instinctive footy in their natural ways, but also managing a game of footy, then I think it's going to be a success. So I'm all for it. I'm backing it. I'm there helping them along the way, guiding them. I'm there for any sort of advice that they need. But, look, they're doing a really good job at the moment.
And in regards to how much the game has changed in the last 5 years, like, what do you reckon is a part of the game, especially as a half, the X's and O's has changed in the game? Is it the pace around the ruck? Is it the pace of decision-making? Is it the fact that you may not have as long to build a set because you've got to react to things so quickly? Like, what has been the change, you think?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kempy. I think it has been a couple of rule changes. I definitely feel like the 6 again rule sped up the ruck. So a lot of structured play sort of went out the window, and you were just reacting to the speed of the ruck and trying to capitalise on the back of that. I just feel like at the moment, as a half, you're not really trying to manage a game and set the game up as much. I just feel like the game is certainly more free-flowing. The speed of the ruck is faster. So you're just playing really reactive footy. You're reacting to what's in front of you, as opposed to 10, 15 years ago, you would almost be shut down to opportunities in order to set the game up in the long run. If you missed 5 or 6 opportunities early, you weren't too concerned because you were just thinking, well, let's just kick them into a corner and make them come out of there and wear them down. And, I think the other thing that can't be ignored, the score lines in games are a lot higher now.
Yeah.
So you are searching for points a heck of a lot more than what you once were. I mean, I remember being involved in great games of footy, 12, 13 years ago, where you'd win a game 6-4. Now your score lines are 38, 36. So, you really do have to have an attacking mindset, I feel. And that's why we're seeing the shift in the halves at the moment, where you're getting these guys go from fullback basically into the halves because they can come up with points.
It's a great point in regards to when we were playing, we were always essentially told, boys, hit short for the first 20 minutes because I just want that guy biting until he's not even thinking about anything else. And the try would come in the 58th minute because of something you were doing in the first 20 minutes. And it's such an interesting point. It's basically like, if points are on offer, we need to try and take them no matter what, because we're never winning a game 16 to. I mean, you could argue, okay, there are some teams that are still relatively good at keeping teams lower than 12 points or whatever. But for most of the case, if a team gets a roll on, they've got 12 points in them pretty much within a 10-minute period. So it is such a different ball game.
Yeah, it is, mate. Yeah, like now you could lose a game in the first 10 minutes, couldn't you? Like a team can blow you off the park and be 18-0 up. That was so uncommon, when we're comparing eras, 10, 15 years ago. It would be unlikely that a team would go out 18-0 in the first 10 minutes and basically blow the game away. So, yeah, look, it's forever evolving, it's forever changing, and you have to keep up with the times. So, like we spoke about, that's what you're seeing with clubs. They're bringing attacking players in to maximise on the rule changes.
Mate, it's super interesting to see the changes and how people are going to react to that, and which teams went too far in the direction of trying to just play almost touch footy, and which teams. It's funny, isn't it? Because it's almost like a circle. The West Tigers came in and essentially played touch footy, and the reaction to that was, we need to slow the play of the ball down because this is too quick. So we brought the wrestle in, and now all of a sudden we're like almost not fully back to that, but very West Tigers touch footy-esque kind of footy.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. You're right. Like the Melbourne Manly era there, that was all about slowing the ruck down, limiting points, win a game, by scoring one more, just one try. And if you can keep them to 0, so be it. And as you said now, you look at that game on the weekend, Melbourne Manly, what was the scoreline? 48-24. It's just crazy to think that, the amount of attacking footy that you can get on in a game of footy now is so much more.
Alrighty, we're going to head to a break. After the break, we've got plenty more to talk about, including getting Foz's opinion on some big plays over the weekend, some of the biggest topics in rugby league. We're going to speak about some form slumps from some teams. We've got previews of games. We've got plenty more to talk about, so stay tuned. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Now, it's been reported that the NRL is looking to buy 33% of the Super League. Only reported today. Now, the thing I find the most interesting about this, doing a bit of business myself. I wouldn't say I'm a businessman, but I've been involved in some, and I find it interesting that I look at the Super League and it's been, I guess, floundering's a bit of a hard word, but it's been struggling for quite a while. And I just go where does the money get made back to make that investment worth it for the NRL? So you go, okay, 33% ownership. Yep, awesome. They become the administrators of the game. Yep, that's also awesome. But are we really lacking for... So if it's not about talent to bring through, because we've got plenty of talent here in this country, from a business perspective, is it about growth in England? And if so, surely we're going to need substantially more than just investing 33%. We would need a huge capital injection to expand the game in England against football, which is just like, unbeatable. We're not even going to come close to that. Have we got any audio there in regards to that, or no, just quotes? What have we got there, Maestro, in regards to quotes?
What have we got? Sorry, got me on the hop here.
Sorry, mate. I just don't have my my page here, which is my fault. Foz, I'd love to get your thoughts, mate. 33% ownership in the Super League, mate.
Yeah, I was just having a flick through it then, Kempy. I mean, look, I don't mind it in the sense that the NRL is going really well and has been for some time at the moment. And, we don't want to see our great game struggling anywhere. And I like the fact that the NRL are thinking, well, Super League is struggling. We need to get in there, get our hands on this and actually, get it back up and running well.
Yep.
So I am all for that part of it. But just listening to you then talk about it from a business standpoint, that's really interesting, mate, because you do wonder what is the upside for the NRL from that point of view.
Especially when we're facing such aggressive, and it's only natural, we're doing the same thing to the AFL, but it's like, let's say we invest, well, I'll just use a random number, $20 million in the Super League. Would that $20 million be better off spent fighting against the AFL in key states? Is that 33% better off in going for a team in Perth or another team in New Zealand? Or I just wonder, are we looking too far away from home, thinking that the battle's already won? And granted, I'm not thinking Landis thinks the battle's won, but I feel like it's like almost it's a move that it's down the priority list. I would assume that money was probably better off spent country footy, local footy that's all struggling at the moment. The AFL, I know we like to say, we're doing so well against the AFL, and we are to a degree, but I tell you what, some of the junior areas in key states, like they do extremely well in poaching young, 8 to 12-year-olds that, want to play a sport and they decide to go to AFL. I'd love to get your thoughts in regards to, Gold Coast is a bit of a battleground between AFL and the NRL. What are your thoughts on that, mate?
Yeah, I like what you're saying there. I think, in a way, the money would be better spent at the moment in terms of growing the game here. I think what it comes back to is how would it look if the game does die off in England?
Yeah, true.
How does that affect obviously our international game? But then in terms of growing our game, where we want to go and take it elsewhere, into more countries, does that have a huge effect on our game? If the quality becomes so poor that it then dies off, we're not getting, as many players playing it over there. So, I guess, look, I'm glad I'm not in the position making these decisions. Like these are big decisions. You're talking millions and millions of dollars of investment and things like that. But look, I think you've got to look at it from two sides and really gather your correct information and then be able to make a really informed decision on the back of that.
Yeah, it's a great point. I think the point in regards to the PR nightmare of if the game died in England, like that's a PR disaster for rugby league as a game. Even though it's like, well, hang on a sec, you don't have any games overseas. It's still just the way you handle that is it's just a negative, no matter how you look at it. So we've got some Sydney Morning Heralders reporting the NRL has agreed to consider buying a proposal to buy 33% stake in the Super League on the proviso it gets complete administrative control. What I would say is that complete administrative control, it would need either enough board seats or majority ownership. And what I mean by that is like you want administrative control, but they would need like full veto power, I think. If you're going to invest into it, you don't want to have some other owners over there that, are private equity and they have different, different goals. Like, for example, let's say there's private equity owners. I'm not sure if there is, but let's just assume there was. Their goal is financial driven. So their goal is like, how do I turn my $10 million into $20 million or $15 million or $100 million? Whereas the NRL's goal is actually, and it says in this, the proposal is being driven by Wigan owner Mike Danson and Warrington owner. The NRL's willingness to listen isn't motivated by a financial windfall, but rather a desire to grow the game. So let's say I'm in an investors meeting and I got a big 33% owner sitting here, and then I've got another guy that owns 10%. And although I have administrative control of the game, do I have actual control of the company? And if I don't, that guy that has 10% in a board seat, the same amount of board seats as his, he might be like, well, I'm not in it for the growth of the game. I invested so I could make $20 million. So, and granted, I'm sure V'landys would be across all of this, but these are all the pitfalls about getting into business together with people that have differing goals and differing wants. And so if the NRL is getting into it to the growth of the game, you would hope at the very least they either get complete control or all members that are ownership or have any power or any board seats are on the same page as this isn't about making money in the short term or even maybe the long term. It's about the game growing. So super, super interesting. Now I've got a text here. Denon, this is a Trojan horse. He gets into the boardroom for 33% and gets management control. He will get control over the entire game, this amount of money, and then look to rebuild internationally. Think about it. Getting a deal done for control, but only 33% of capital deployed. Western Knight. Yeah, like if you can get full control for 30%, 33%, so I would assume that means that the NRL would have majority voting rights. So let's say there's a board of 4 people, they would have 3 of the votes, unless it's set up differently. And so I get where you're coming from, mate. Deploying only 33% capital rather than a 51% share. That's, you're saving, 26% or something like that, something along those lines, money-wise. But I just wonder whether owning that, it's one thing to go into something and go, I want to own 33% of it, I want to run it. It's another thing to actually go and invest all the time in the finances. Will it be worth it? In regards to Super League, Foz, have you ever considered Super League for yourself, mate?
Mate, you know what? Not at the moment, Kempy, just due to my situation here on the Gold Coast.
Yep.
Family-wise, it's not really an option at the moment. But I will say this, coming into the NRL, you were always excited by the fact that the game was really strong over there. And the Super League was always that lingering, thought in the back of your mind that maybe one day, it'd be great to go over there and actually, be a part of one of those sides and play in that great competition. It's sad to see that it's actually in such a poor spot, financially. And then, I think in terms of quality, it's certainly died off as well. So, look, like I touched on at the start, I like the NRL's thinking in terms of helping getting it back up and running into a really great space. But it's just going to be interesting to see what sort of financial gain comes on the back of that for the NRL, if any.
Yeah, mate, super, super interesting. I mean, what I like, though, about this current administration is they're looking at things, they're moving, they're shaking, things are happening. Like, we're looking at the Super League, we're looking at ways to beat the AFL. Whereas I do feel like for a few years we were so safe. We were just worried about what we had in front of us, and we were just like, please don't take anything, rather than going, no, if you're not expanding, you're dying. I love it. Anyway, we're going to head to a break. Make sure to text 0457 736 736 after the break. We've still got Foz with us for another whole 30 minutes. How good? So make sure to stay tuned. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. We are here for Chemist Warehouse. Get discounted prescriptions and save more money every day at Chemist Warehouse. Panthers slumped to their 4th straight loss against the Cowboys. Isaiah Yeo was playing his 250th game. Still not enough to get victory. Cleary back on the weekend after a game out with a head knock. Is too much expected of Cleary? There's so many questions going to this. See, I'd love to hear your thoughts. My theory at the moment, Foz, is I reckon the Penrith Panthers dynasty was built on ball in play. And so, as you know, mate, that's about no errors, no penalties. Let's basically say we know we're fitter than you. And we're going to play a style of footy that's going to fatigue you, and we're just going to beat you in the last back end of the game. At the moment, they're 10th in the competition for completion rate. And I just think that if the core of your game isn't there and you've got players making errors, because we always talk about how systematic the Penrith Panthers are. They're so systematic. The core of their system, in my opinion, is ball and play, and it just hasn't been there for them in the first 5 rounds. I'd love to get your thoughts, mate. What do you reckon's going wrong at the Panthers?
Yeah, look, it's a good point you made. I heard you make it the other day, and I was in agreement with you with that. Look, my take on it, Kempy, is have we underestimated the loss of Fisher, Harris and Luai? And even to the extent that they have continued to win without losing players each and every year, and quality players, and they've had the depth to continually replace these guys with more quality juniors coming through. I honestly look at their side at the moment and I feel depth-wise, this is the first year that they are really feeling the pain of these big losses. And you're talking genuine quality. Like you're talking Jerome Luai, who's an international Origin 5'8", 4-time premiership winner. That perfect foil for Nathan Cleary and Isaiah. And then you're talking Fisher Harris, who's been their imposing, dominant leader for so long, their inspirational forward. I just look at their side now and I feel like, man, there's a lot of quality that's gone. And look, each year we've gone, well, they've done so well to replace it. Kikau went, Coruscant went, Burton left, and they kept replacing them with these young guys coming through. But has it finally caught up to them is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's a great point. We're potentially putting together a story for the next Monday's show about the fact that people look at the Penrith first grade side and go, wow, that's been rated. And I'll just read you out the people that have left. This is thanks to Fox League. This is a starting side of players that have left. Iongi, Staines, May, Crichton, Taruva. So that's your back line. Here's your halves. Burton, Luai. Here's your front row. Fisher, Harris, Spencer Lenu. Here's your 9, Coruscant. Here's your back row. Kikau, Catewell. Here's your 13, Hopgood. Here's your 14, May. 15, Sean O'Sullivan, Salmon, Tavita Pangai Jr. and Zach Hoskins. That's a 17. That could be a top 8 side.
Wow. Yeah, and that is true quality. That like those guys are they're the stars of their team.
Yeah, mate.
They're just not plugging holes in other sides. They're the star of their teams each and every week. So, look, I mean, how far can your depth go in one system? And it just may be a bit of a teething stage that they're going through, adjusting to these big losses and then giving these young guys the confidence to feel their way in and start to feel that they can dominate in that role. But it may just take some time, Kempy.
Absolutely. And I guess the tough thing, though, for the Panthers is so that's a story that we know, that these are the players that we know about. But what people don't realise is their juniors are getting ransacked now. So, clubs are going into that Penrith nursery and taking players out that are like 15 and 16 years old. So much so that I think in this story will most likely, I won't say break, because it's not a breaking story, but a deep dive on Code Sport over the next week or so. But I think it's their Harold Matt side or something. It's like the second year that they haven't made finals or whatever, because they've just been completely... Basically, if you're a club that doesn't have a big junior system, and there's all these other reasons, resources, and you can say why they don't have it and why they should have it, whatever. But if I'm a recruitment officer, I'm going straight into Penrith's backyard and I'm picking out the best young guy coming through and I'm offering him a little bit more than he'd get somewhere else. And then if you've got 17 clubs doing it, or 16 clubs doing it, you'd have whole rosters getting poached from Penrith Panthers now. And so I understand that other teams have had to deal with being poached juniors, but I think it's probably happening at a record rate for Penrith at the moment. And I think that, I know I'm going to sound like the bloke that's standing up for the big guy in Penrith that's won 4 in a row, but at some point I feel like there probably has to be a little bit of protection for them because they've set all this up. I mean, apparently the Bulldogs have gone quite aggressively into the Penrith juniors, so it's an interesting situation the Penrith Panthers find themselves in.
Well, why wouldn't you? I mean,
Mate,
they've shown for 5 years in a row now that they've been able to lose top class players and then bring in these guys from their junior system that have been able to do just as good a job, which has amazed everyone in the league. So, I mean, if you're a recruitment officer, as you touched on at another club, you were just going, well, how many Isaac Tagos have they got?
Yeah.
You know, how many Brian To'os have they got? How many, you know, Matt Burtons and Jerome Luai? So you're going to be going and watching so much junior footy down at that Penrith system and trying to grab what you can.
Mate, absolutely. Like imagine a world where right now, Isaiah Katoa, the leading half for Redcliffe Dolphins, is actually the guy getting brought in, because that was the plan. So Penrith Panthers' plan was, if Nathan Cleary goes down or Jerome Luai goes down, Katoa takes over. And now all of a sudden he's the marquee signing for the Redcliffe Dolphins 3 years ago. Now imagine a world where we were coming into this season and Luai got moved on. I don't think we're sitting here going, oh, look out, it's Katoa and Cleary, like they're going to struggle. We'd be sitting here going, how are we going to deal with Katoa and Cleary together? So that's
spot on. and take nothing away from Jack Cole and Blaze Talangi. I rate them very highly as young prospects and players coming through. But, you know, are they quite ready to fill that huge hole that's been left by Luai? As you touched on, that would have been Isaiah Katoa. It would have been potentially Sean O'Sullivan. It would have been potentially Jack Cogger. How many have they lost through that system in the last few years that could have been primed, ready, had Luai taken a big money deal somewhere else and chosen to go and play at another club? So, yeah, I mean, the talent has just been completely and utterly scraped through, and now they're being tested on that level. But, look, if anyone can do it, I'll say this. I am backing Penrith to do it.
Yeah.
When you think about Ivan Cleary as a coach, how good he's been through this period. He's always found a different way, a way to capitalise on the players he's got. You know, they've still got Nathan Cleary, the best player in the game, as they'll find a way. Yeah,
mate, I'm with you. I think they'll upskill a lot of those young guys coming through. I will say, just to note, this is how accurate the Penrith Panthers system is. Isaiah Katoa essentially, if let's say it all went to plan at the Panthers, would be debuting this year. And you'd probably say this year is the right time. In a perfect world, Isaiah Katoa would be debuting, because he's playing his 50th game this week. And so he got brought up to the Dolphins, and I think we could all agree probably got thrown in the deep end the first year or two, which is a good thing. You want him to get that experience. But I think at a big dog club, imagine how much more poised he'd be and how ready he would be right now to get. That's how accurate they had their plan. Because Luai left, Katoa would have jumped in at around 20 years old, and he's so I just wanted to point out these salary caps and squads, they're not planned year on year. They are like 5 to 10 years in the making. And they've managed to nail Isaiah Katoa if he had have still been there. It's just a little interesting thing I thought I'd bring up. Harv, you'd know more about that as well, mate.
No, it's a great point you make, mate. I agree with you. I mean, he is a quality halfback who's gone up to Redcliffe and done an admirable job. And to think that he could have been potentially rolling in now playing alongside Nathan Cleary, I mean, they wouldn't have missed a beat. Mm-hmm. And as I said, that's taking nothing away from the young guys they've got there at the moment filling in Jack Cole, who I've got a great opinion of. But I just think Katoa, like they don't miss a beat there if Luai goes.
I mean, he's a current 7 for Tonga that made the World Cup final. Not the World Cup final, the recent Tri Nations. What was it? The Four Nations.
Yeah, Pacific Champs.
Sorry, Pacific Cup.
Yeah.
They made the Pacific Cup final against Australia recently with Katoa as their 7. So a super interesting conversation. I agree with you, mate. I think that they'll bounce back and they'll be able to find a way to get the job done later on in the year. Look, we're going to head to a break. After the break, we've got plenty more to talk about, including Origin eligibility. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Don't forget, April 22nd, Tuesday, 6 p.m, Bloke jerseys drop. That is right, 6 p.m, so that's not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after. Limited edition Bloke jerseys, the most in demand we've ever had. You see the Bloke jerseys everywhere. It's at bloke.shop, 6 p.m, not next Tuesday, but the Tuesday after, the 22nd. Now, Foz, I'd love to get your thoughts, mate. You know, as a Kiwi yourself, Origin eligibility, the Tier 2 nations, you've heard it all, mate. Just give me your thoughts.
I touched on this last night with the horoscope on levels, actually, but yeah, look, I want to say this, that I feel that the game is in a position where it can change the rules based on a certain criteria, and I myself, I'm a passionate Kiwi. I chose to play for New Zealand, and that was the right decision. And I'd never regret that. In saying that, I moved to Australia when I was 8 years old.
Yeah.
I grew up in Sydney, New South Wales. So I loved watching Origin. And I touched on this, like there would have been nothing stopping me from sharing the same passion that I wear for the Kiwi jersey as I would have had I been able to represent New South Wales. But I understand the fabric of the history of it and what people are trying to save and preserve in that respect. So it is New South Wales, it is Queensland, it's that deep-seated rivalry. They hate one another. You know, do you get that when you start, being more lenient around the criteria to get guys in?
Matt, I'd love to ask you this question because I've always, when this topic comes up, it's always very easy to go, what makes the most people happy and forget about the hard conversations, which is like, well, hang on a sec, like we've got to hold on to certain things and have conservative thoughts. But I'd love to get your thoughts on this because this is the example I always use when players of other heritages want to have the rules changed. And so this is the example I use. And let me be clear, I don't know where I've sit on this whole situation. It honestly tears me apart inside because being a proud Queenslander, I feel conservative about it, but I also understand the changing landscape of the game. But imagine there was a North and South Island origin and in New Zealand. And let's just say it was in rugby union. And it used to be a lot of those players got selected and played in the All Blacks. Imagine a world where that same origin happened in New Zealand, but a lot of those players played in that origin, but then went and played for Australia. Do you think Kiwis would be okay with that?
It's a really valid point you make. Like, I can't really say yes or no to that in terms of because it hasn't happened, so I wouldn't know how I would feel.
Yep.
Look, at the end of the day, I understand if the rules stay the same. Put it that way. Like I understand that the fabric of origin has always been the best of New South Wales versus the best of Queensland, and that's what's made the rivalry so deep. I guess where it gets a bit murky now, Kempy, is that now you've got players that, because the landscape of the game has changed so much and we do have a lot more Polynesian players in our game, you've got a whole lot of guys playing Origin that then go and represent Tonga and Samoa.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in my opinion, I don't know how they can still be Tier 2 nations when at any given time they could topple Australia, New Zealand or England.
Absolutely.
And have done so. So that's where I feel like we need to be open to understanding where everyone's coming from in this, because it has changed. We're not talking about origin of the 90s or the early 2000s.
For sure, absolutely.
The game is looking very different now.
Yep.
But look, I certainly understand the point that you make, and that's why I tend to, obviously sit on the fence with it and not,
Mate, I'm on the fence
really
too.
go too hard either way. I really understand if there would be change, but I also understand if they wanted to keep it the same.
Mate, I'm with you. It's a tough conversation. First of all, thank you so much for joining us, Foz. We really, really appreciate it, and I can't wait to see you back on the field, mate.
Thanks, Kempy. Thanks for having me on.
All righty, we're going to head to a break. After the break, we've got plenty more, including the great horoscope. He's joined us. Justin Horo joins us after the break. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. We are here for Chemist Warehouse. Get discounted prescriptions and save more money every day at Chemist Warehouse. And if you want to listen to the podcast belatedly, go to Apple, Spotify, subscribe to the Captain's Run. We have spoken about everything. Who has been the best signing so far this year? We've spoken about the head high crackdown. We've spoken about Kieran Foran came on the show for an entire hour. There is so much you don't want to miss, so make sure Apple and Spotify. But the great Justin Horo joins me. How you going, brother?
Kempy, how are we, mate? We're going from the Foz to the Hoz. from the Foz to
Mate.
the Hoz, and I heard it on the way in, mate. How good's the Foz?
He's almost too decorated of a player to be on this show, if I'm being honest. Like, after Smithy left, I was like, mate, this is supposed to be the Resi run, not the bloody...
Yeah, he's got too many runs on the board, doesn't he?
Yeah,
Cam? He's
what's going on
putting
here?
us to shame with the stats and the career that he's had.
He's actually speaking from a point of authority rather than just making it all up. Mate, Hoz, first of all, I want to get straight into it, mate. Super League, 33% administrative, ownership or get to make the decisions. The NRL is looking at doing that with the Super League. I'd love to get your thoughts on it, mate.
I love it, mate. Yeah, once I heard the news, I think this is only broken in the latest 24 hours. There's a really good product over there, Kempy.
Okay.
There's a lot of people that are passionate about the game. Now, the biggest, slight on the Super League when you're a player that leaves the NRL and goes over there, the condition of the facilities, and I'm not even talking grounds, I'm talking training. I told a story on yours that went went viral, and I got hammered by the Wakey fans at the time in the forum page, and in which I replied. I went in and had a little go with them. But jokes aside, the quality of the training facilities and I guess just the funding around the teams can be improved, which what I think would really make the product even better.
Okay.
I think there's so much talent over there, and that's why sometimes we see players come over from the Super League player and a little bit raw and take a little bit, for them to acclimatise to the NRL, just because of the level of training and the facilities that allow you to train at a top tier level.
Yep.
Right. So I think that's one of the big things where I think a small percentage, the number's obviously important, but I think if Volandis is going to get on top of this and they improve the training, the facilities, and a few things like that, where you don't have to throw a whole heap of money at it, but a small investment to get some control and start making sure that it's more so that the owners and the clubs are making the correct decisions and making sure that certain guidelines are met.
Yeah, because surely the facilities are there, they're just not being used potentially?
No, there's just the quality is just awful.
But for example, could deals be done with football clubs and stuff for quality?
And it's a money issue. So going back to the Wakey part of it, there has been a guy called, I believe his name's Matty Ellis. He's just taken over Wakefield Trinity in the last couple of years. Comes in with a bit of money. I don't know what his background is, but he's done a great job.
Yep.
We were aside from the facilities and stuff like that, and the training paddock and the quality of it, we were legit still doing ice baths in rubbish bins.
Garbage bins. Yep.
With the that's what I'm not talking about 2005, Kempy. That was 2018, 19.
Oh, wow.
Now they've come a long way. They've got a good system in there now.
Yep.
A guy like Matty Ellis with a little bit of money behind him, and it's purely just like a passion project for him.
Okay.
Because you're not making a heap of money. You've got to be a diehard fan at the moment to be investing in clubs over there.
Yeah.
So if you can chip in the right amount, the right number, and build the game, I think it's great for the growth of the game, because I'm huge on, we're going to talk about eligibility and all that. I really think there is a passionate fan base up there in the Northern Hemisphere, and it's like one of those, it's like real estate. It's a really good position, and where we might be getting, there's some really good land here.
Yeah. Okay.
The house doesn't look that great at the moment, but if we do it up properly, you can just, in 5 or 10 years, we can resell that and make not only leave it in a better place than in which you got it, but that you can make some money on the back of it if you're willing to be patient and do make the right moves. So that's the way I sort of envision.
Okay.
The NRL sort of buying the Super League.
I mean, how good would it be to get back to the late 80s and early 90s where the Super League was genuinely thriving and England was So, yeah, mate, it's going to be interesting to see what Landy does. He's a mover and shaker. Now, speaking of Landys, Career Mail. Peter Bedell is reporting ARL Commission boss Landys has rejected calls for an overhaul of Rugby League's controversial representative eligibility rules. Quote, it's not an agenda at the moment, Landys said when asked if there would be urgent changes to code representative eligibility rules. It's on the media's agenda, but it's not on ours. I have no issue. It's important to keep the international game strong, and the current system has been great for the success of the Pacific nations. So why will we change the rules? The State of Origin system works exceptionally well now. There is many people saying we shouldn't touch it as there is who want to change it. This debate doesn't affect Payne Haas anyway because Samoa is a Tier 2 nation. so he can still play State of Origin. If that's the preference of the Origin players with Polynesian heritage, we respect their decision. The rules are in place to stop players moving from Tier 1 countries, but Australia is strong enough without having to put bans on players wanting to represent their heritage. We have looked at these rules on a number of occasions, and it's such a polarising issue that we've decided not to do anything. I'm happy with the rules as they stand. I think, look, I think Landys would be aware of that. I think a lot of people's question around that is like, okay, well, how's that fair to the Kiwis that have, lived in Australia? And anyway, we know the eligibility argument. Hammer has also recently come out and said he's keen to potentially look at representing Samoa at some point in the future. I think he hasn't said it at all, so I want to be extremely clear. He hasn't said anything, but I think it seems like there's like a bit of a behind-the-scenes push to get the Samoan heritage boys all across like they did with Tonga a few years ago.
Yeah.
And granted, they're in a far better position than Tonga were at that time. Like they've got guys like Luai Critter. And so it seems like that'll happen sooner rather than later. Eligibility rule, Scope, speak to me, mate. What's going on?
Yeah, I hope he reconsiders it for Volandis, and I agree. Like with the way the Pacific Nations and the Pacific Islanders system is set up, like I'm all for it. I think it's fine. I think you can, proudly represent your country of heritage if you choose, or play for Australia if you've grown up under the current guidelines. I really like the guidelines for Samoa and Tonga, because I can see a player like players like Brian To'o, Jerome Luai and Stephen Crichton, who were born in Western Sydney, who grew up in the area, and shown allegiance and would have an allegiance and attachment to the state of New South Wales because of that, whilst also having the ability to represent Samoa, their country of heritage at the end of the year. So I see no problem with it. Now, I guess there's probably not enough uproar, or maybe, from the Kiwis in particular, because I don't think the Poms, even though they're the other team that miss out, they're not as affected as compared to what we are in New Zealand. And there's only one real outlier right now, and that's Victor Radley. So that's crazy that an Aussie guy from the eastern suburbs, born and bred with grandfather with heritage, who's a Pom, has decided to play for England and therefore cannot play for New South Wales. That's crazy to me. I've always said that, and I strongly believe that. So they've got to look into the certain. So I know Foz was talking about it before. I jumped on and I used him as an example last night on levels as a hypothetical. All right, Foz, you arrived here at 8 years old. If during your time, I know you were a proud Kiwi and decided to play for the Kiwis, but going up to primary school in New South Wales and, coming through the system into high school footy and junior development footy.
He has an Australian accent.
Mate, he's as Aussie. Me and him are as Aussie as it comes.
Yeah.
Like, I've been here since I was 3. Foz has been here since he was 8. The difference is I was never the quality to ever be asked to play for either of the teams. New Zealand didn't even want me. But my allegiance was clear, and so was Kieran's. But if given the opportunity, I think it would have been, fair for Kieran off the back. Now, I didn't believe that 10 or 15 years ago, but the climate's changed. And when I look at guys like Payne Haas, Jerome Law and Steve Crichton, who are able to do that and still go back and make good money, it's a factor. I don't think it's the overriding factor. I think the main factor for everyone in our game, and this is the media and everyone, we put so much effort into making this the pinnacle. Like, why wouldn't you want to play in it? Now, the money is just an added incentive. But these players are earning $1 million, Kempy.
It's changed.
100,000 is a lot of money. Don't get me wrong, but it's not like years ago when they were on, say, 350, and then $100,000 would be 30% of their wage. Yeah. Like, that would be a dramatic change.
If you're on the combo for Origin, you're on a big wicket these days.
Dylan Brown, right? So, he's 1.3. Like, he doesn't have to play Origin for money. He's going to earn good money at Newcastle, regardless.
Yeah, I don't think money is an argument anymore for most players. Look, I'm sure there are some players that love cash.
Of course.
We know some
I love cash.
Mate,
I love an invoice at SEN.
Mate, love an invoice. Now, mate, I've got to ask you this as a Kiwi, and I asked Foz this, and I want to be clear here. This is not a. I'm not saying it in a trying to get a rise out of anyone or anything like that, because I'm truly, and I'm happy to admit, I'm on the fence with this one. I'm a proud Queenslander. I grew up there. I find it very hard to split state from nation, but I understand that other people can. But I ask this. Let's imagine a world where there was North Island versus South Island in rugby union in New Zealand.
Yep.
And it traditionally, for let's just say 60 years, it was actually essentially the trial match for who played for the All Blacks.
Yep.
Let's say tomorrow someone said, we'll loosen the rules. In 10 years, we actually might see a North Island versus South Island, and most of those players will play for Australia and not the All Blacks. Do you think the public in New Zealand would be okay with that?
Kick him out of the country. No, I'm only look. That's a really good hypothetical. That's why it is a very tricky thing. And look, I've got my I've got an opinion on it, and mine might be a little bit biased because I'm a Kiwi.
Yep.
It's very hard to gauge on if something like that would happen. If and not just to say this because again it strengthens my argument.
Of course.
If the product of the game in New Zealand could take something like they've got in Origin right now and build the economy and build the game in rugby union, and that meant we had quality Australian players playing in it, I think I'd be okay for him to go back and play for the Wallabies.
Yeah.
As long as that game was sort of bringing in the revenue like we do have right now in the state of Origin, because I understand, and I've grown up here at Kempy since I was 3, so I understand the passion, even though, I would have elected Kiwis. But for not only what it gives the two states, but more so what it gives the game as well. Because not all of that money is just going back to the state of Queensland and the state of New South Wales, right? That's helping put the position in the game in that it is now. And there are rugby union, AFL, all the main competitors in our sport right now that would love to have the quality of game that we've got in Origin. So I think I'd be okay with it, mate.
Yeah.
But it's hard because we obviously don't have anything like that.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's an imaginary, because I think sometimes that we don't think about it from a perspective. Like, it's very easy to go, oh yeah, you Aussies should just, you don't know the difference between heritage and state, and to tell Aussies like, you don't know how we feel. But it's like, well, vice versa. Like, you don't know how an Australian feels that was, brought up here and his heritage is from here as well.
And for sure, let me just quickly add something too, because I agree with you in that sense. I don't think everyone in New Zealand would be open to that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, that's just my opinion. And just like you don't speak on behalf of all Australians.
For
so
sure.
there would be a whole heap of people that would have been listening to that hypothetical going, no way.
Yeah.
No way. Like, if we're playing in a competition here in New Zealand, like I said, where I joked, like, no, we're not going to take any Aussies. We're going to build up the game in New Zealand. So that's where it is.
Yeah,
because so many different angles that you can take on it.
For sure, because there'd be a lot of Kiwis, I do believe, that like, hang on a sec, you're going to represent North Island against South Island, where there's just like 100 years of history, but then you're going to play for the Wallabies, who we hate. And it's like the separation of nation and state, for me, it's hard to separate because I feel like they're intangibly, like, they're the same. So what I mean by, it's almost like going, I'm going to represent my street, but not my suburb. People go, hang on a sec, your street's in your suburb. Now, I sound really, really conservative here, but I'm actually not. I'm actually just having the other opinion from the other side. I actually, once I've heard it all, I think the key thing that like moves the needle for me in regards to putting my own, because like if I'm being honest, in my own personal opinion, I would want Queenslanders and New South Welshmen to play for Australia. If it was just what I wanted.
It's fair enough.
As an Australian, as someone that is very proud of being a Queenslander, and when I think of Queensland, I think of Australia.
Yep.
However, I look at the demographics of the game, and in 10, 20 years, it is going to be majority Polynesian probably. That's just the way it's going to go. And so as a game, we'd be stupid not to react to that and try and create rules that help the game flourish. Like, my number one priority is rugby league flourishing. And so my own personal feelings about Queensland and Australia come second to the game of rugby league flourishing. And if the demographics suggest that we've got 60 to 70% Polynesians, then we need to cater to that to a degree. Otherwise, you're basically saying, all right, let's piss off the major majority demographic of our country, of our game, just for some rules that may or may not affect. We don't really know whether it will.
But the landscape's going to change as well, not only rugby league, just in life too, Kempy.
For sure.
We look at our situations. I know, your partner is not Australian. My partner's Australian. My daughter's Australian. I'm full-blooded Kiwi before, the line of my daughter. So that's going to be completely different for her in 20 years.
Yeah.
And she may go on and date a different nationality who are brought up here. So times are changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just life in general is more multicultural than, say, it was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So that's another huge factor.
Yeah, it's a great point you bring up because, like, we keep focusing in on rugby league, but it's actually a representative of society as a whole in Australia. We are, unless you're Indigenous Australian, we are all immigrants to a degree, and it's becoming more multicultural as the years go on. You know, so like when you go down and walk down in Sydney at the moment, it is so multicultural. So that is going to have an effect on the landscape of rugby league as well. So, yeah, it's a really interesting, as I said, like for me personally, I'm a very proud Queenslander, a very proud Australian, but I always sit there and go, what is best rugby league? And if you could show me a path where, whether it's a decision for opening up eligibility or closing it down or whatever is best for the broadest, audience of rugby league, that's all I really care about. It really is. And I think that anyone that's trying to be like, the answer is simple. I think, come on, bro.
No way.
The answer's not simple, bro. Like, have some respect for both sides.
Yep.
I think when you say things like that, like the answer is simple, you're not respecting how much this means to people.
Yes.
From both sides.
That's fair.
You're not respecting, for example, if I was to say to a Polynesian kid, mate, the answer's simple. You play for Queensland, you play for Australia. That's disrespectful to how he feels about his heritage. That means so much to him. I spoke about it on my podcast, but you can grow up in Australia, but at home, if your culture is Samoan or Tongan, it's almost like you're growing up in a heritage that is from somewhere else. So, of course, you're going to have a connection to that other land that you may not actually physically live in, but the culture you're living in is slightly different, at least at home. It's almost like if you spoke a different language at home. You're still an Australian, you're just speaking a different language at home to a degree.
Yep.
And so I just think it's complicated. I do err on the side of changing demographics. We made rules when the game looked completely different. Like, it literally looked different. It's changed.
Yep.
And I think we need to change with it. I think we need to adjust with it to a degree. We've got a text here already that's not understanding what I'm saying. Can't be respectfully, 96% of Australian heritage are from other countries. Did I not just say that? That's the great thing about radio. Maybe we're on a delay.
There must have been a delayed text from about 5 minutes ago.
But anyway, we're going to head to a break. It is the age-old discussion. Text us in 0457 736 736. Keep it respectful, guys. Keep it respectful. We've got plenty more to talk about with the great Justin Horo. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. We have got plenty of texts here, guys, and they've all been respectful. How good. Kempy, I think the way the rules are now are fine. I can understand the old school being a bit different in their view, but a lot of these players would be just as passionate about New South Wales or Queensland as they are about the heritage that they represent. Not saying you think like that, but I think some of the older generation are worried Australia won't dominate the international game, which would actually be a good thing going into World Cup. They may be up to 4 teams that could win. Now, I do think it's a generational gap. I think you'd find a lot of younger Australians
agreed.
Would be able to separate Queensland and Australia or New South Wales and Australia. I think generationally there is a gap.
I was just thinking about a play just then. We were talking about your partner's heritage and where your partner's from. What about Siwa Wong? Born in New Zealand.
Yeah.
He's got Chinese, Fijian and Tongan heritage grew up and playing here in Australia.
Wow.
So he ticks 5 boxes.
You know
I know it only really matters for the New Zealand versus Australian argument, but if the nations were strong enough in China.
Mate, you know why that's a really good point? Because guess who has the weakest opportunity to get him? The Kiwis.
Kiwis, yep.
And so that proves the point of how is it fair that the Kiwis sit back and go, bro, when we go and ask Katoa or Wong to play for us, he's going to go, I don't get to play Origin. Whereas when Samoa and Tonga go and ask those boys, can you play for us? They're like, 100% I'll play for you because I get to play Origin still. How's that fair on New Zealand?
Yeah, he gets ticked all 4 boxes.
Yeah.
So he can go 5, sorry. So instead of New Zealand and just New Zealand, he can go, all right, I'll declare for Australia, New South Wales, and if I don't make Australia, I can play for Fiji. I can play for China if they were strong enough. And missing one more? No, that's it. So Fiji, China, Australia.
There you go.
New South Wales.
Me, him, Bizza. Who else for China? There's a few others.
Ooh, it can be. That's a good wing combination.
Yeah, me and
Yardage
Bizza.
carries. You go. Let's go Bizza first.
Yeah,
I want to
oh,
get on the
yeah,
front
yeah,
foot.
yeah. Give me
and
a
then
quick play the ball.
Kempy with the speed.
Oh, mate, give me a
and then
quick play
see
the ball.
what Wong play 3. I
Oh,
like that.
I like that. I feel the eligibility situation is crazy, especially when you bring up the Radley situation. I just think people that English shouldn't have played for Queensland as well as others. There's that song that goes around every place. I mean, that really does hurt the argument when you hear of players that, like, I think Sterling could have played for Queensland, played for New South Wales. I think, and obviously the English with Queensland.
Yep.
That really does hurt the old school argument.
Yeah.
We're like, hang on a sec, it's about where you're from. And then, like, English is our greatest ever outside back. Personally, I feel that people that wouldn't want people playing here or there are just worried about losing the talent. That's how I feel anyway. Good to have Scope on with you, and I'm a Manly and New South Wales. Sorry, Kempy. Look, I think anyone that's like worried about Australia losing is such like a weak mentality. Like, bro, I've got enough faith that Aussies will always be strong in rugby league, and if they're not, then we need to be better. Like, be better.
So
bro.
do I. Like, I don't think. Yes, it's definitely going to even out the playing pool for these Pacific Islander countries, and then even potentially New Zealand if they did, move the needle. But Australia is still probably going to be favourites. It's just not going to be $1.30 favourites going into World Cup.
Which is good.
And I think that's great for international footy. I would love to see, just say the odds come out for the World Cup and the Australians are $2.50, New Zealand is $3, Samoa is $3, and Tonga's $4. That would be...
Oh, mate.
That would be so much more intriguing to me to watch the national game at the back end of the season if those were the odds and you're doing it responsibly, of course.
Always responsibly. Alrighty, the Dolphins v the Panthers Thursday, 8 p.m, Suncorp Stadium. Dolphins team news. Tommy Gilbert returns from suspension. Max Psycho Plath, he moves back to lock. Felice Kafusi goes to the prop.
Always gets me when you do that.
Mark Nichols dropping onto the bench. Ray Stone is out after being suspended for a high shot. What about him walking off with that high shot? He looks so angry.
Did you see him turning around and like pumping his chest out to the referee?
I was like, is he about to fight the ref? Panthers team news. The Ghost, Dylan Edwards returns. I tell you what, Dylan Edwards' value, it may skyrocket this week. If the Panthers all of a sudden turn around and turn into the team we know they are, all of a sudden the Ghost at the back there, he'll no longer be the Ghost. He'll be the GOAT. Returns from a groin injury that's kept him out for the last 3 weeks. Scotty Sorensen also returning from concussion. Mitch Kenny drops out with a shoulder injury, meaning Luke Summerton comes in at hooker. Blaze Talangi comes in at 5'8". Mate, speak to me, Scope. What are you thinking, mate?
I'm excited to see I'm excited to see Blaze Talangi.
Yeah.
It's been a slow burn. A lot of people probably expected to see Blaze play in Vegas.
Yep.
It wasn't the case. There probably, it seems like there are things that they've needed to work on with him. So I'm looking forward to that. He's getting. I know Mitch Kenny's not playing, but it's 3 out of the 4 main spine members.
Yep.
Dylan Edwards, Nathan Cleary, and I'm adding Isaiah Yeo to that as well.
Yep.
Who's super important. So it's a great opportunity for Blaze. It's a tough one to pick. This one, you just can't.
Surely the Panthers
You can't
have their big
fathom.
game.
You cannot fathom. The Panthers losing 5 in a row, can you?
It's not happening.
But then the Dolphins have been much improved after a really good win last week against the Titans.
They've built into it, the Dolphins.
And they have. And they weren't poor. Compared to Parramatta, who were winless as well.
Yeah.
Parramatta had proper blowouts.
Yeah.
Dolphins were thereabouts in pretty much all of their games.
They were great against the Broncos. I thought they were dominant
Yes, they
for the
were.
first half.
Agreed.
And so there's going to be one game where we all go, oh, okay, the Panthers are back. And when that game happens, it's surely going to happen at
if
some
Dolphins
stage.
beat them, can the Panthers make the 8?
Yeah, I look. What's harder, winning 4 premierships in a row or making the 8 from 1 and 5?
Yeah, fair point.
I just reckon
they can go on a run, can't
mate,
they? They can figure it out.
They can figure it out, and also they can win the comp from anywhere in the 8.
Yeah.
Like as I said, what's statistically harder, 4 premierships or winning the comp from 7th?
Imagine if you're poor 3rd or 4th place and you get beaten by first, and then you got to play Panthers first week of finals.
And it's
second week of finals, sorry.
It's like Tigers go on this incredible run and like, we made finals, boys, and they get up the Panthers round 1 and it's going, what? Okay, just quickly before we break, Dolphins or Panthers?
Panthers, because of what we just said.
Mate,
no confidence.
I just reckon they're going to bounce back. It's all about completion. They high completion rate with Dylan Edwards back in the side. I think they get the job done. We're going to head to a break after the break. We've got Dragons v Titans and Broncos v the Roosters. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. Dragons v Titans, Friday, 6 p.m, Wynn Stadium. Dragons unchanged. Flano, he stayed loyal to a team that went down to the Eels. The game was there to be won. Titans team news, Jojo Fafita returns. Sammy goes to the centres. Bo Fermor moves into the back row. Fafita drops back to the bench. Sam Verrills returns at hooker, and Chris Randall sliding to lock in the absence of Tino Fa'asuamaleaui. You know, with David Fafita, and I've said this for about 2 years now, get him into the middle. Get him into the middle, bring him on and say, mate, you've got 20 minutes to go nuts.
Yeah, so I reckon keep him on the edge,
okay.
Kebby, but the same thought process. I reckon he's a bench player.
Okay.
I don't like him in the start of the games. He takes too much energy out of him. I think he likes playing off the bench too.
Okay.
So I don't think it's super critical to come out and say it. I think, you know, the big in is Jojo Fafita, who returns, which allows Sammy to go back to the centres, which allows both for more to go back in the back row. And Fafita come on at the 25-minute mark, and then he knows mentally that he's only got 55, 60 minutes, front load, give you all your energy. Whether it's in the middle, whether it's on the edge, he knows he doesn't have to stay out there as long.
All right, take the name off it, and we just got David Fafita's attributes and his physical build. Would he not be what you would make of a modern-day front rower for today's game?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, the measurables. Yeah.
And so I just wonder, just simplify his game where he's not because like sometimes, and I feel sorry for Dave Fafita, because one year we're asking him, mate, score 17 tries. And then the next year we're asking, mate, you need to be more of a stereotypical back rower, make your tackles, run your hard line. So I do feel sorry for Fafita at times where he's like getting a bit torn between the conservative fullback. Because I remember the year where he scored 17 tries, everyone was off him because he didn't do all the hard stuff. He didn't run for 150 metres a game. So he came out the next year, and Foz had a lot to do with it. He straightened him up a lot. And he didn't score all the tries, but he was running for about 120 metres a game and making his tackles. And then everyone said, oh, we've lost the X factor that David we know last year. So I do feel a bit sorry for him. But I reckon, mate, if you just put him in the front row, like look how good Spencer Lenu goes in the front row when he actually goes in and rips and tears.
Yeah.
And I just reckon if you go to Fafita, mate, up and down, 20 minutes of the best, you'd force him to get involved in the game. Now, could he fatigue because he's in the middle tackling? Maybe. But I just forced him into the game.
Yeah, so if you're a coach, you'd have to convince him, because I think that's the biggest thing.
Yeah,
I think mentally,
fair.
You know,
That's
the way
fair.
he views the game and the way he views the edge, he can be, if you can get the best out of him, even if it's for 55 or 60 minutes on an edge,
that's fair.
and still get a high work rate or get some explosive plays, that's just me personally.
Yeah.
That's what I'd tell him.
It really is about convincing him. Like getting
mentally.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah,
I was an edge back row, Kempy. The back end of my career, I started to slow down. They said, jump in the middle. I was like,
Nah, don't want to be doing that.
All right, I'll give you 40 minutes, but it's no when you're going to be as quality as 60 out wide.
Dragons, mate. Look, I know Dragons fans are a bit upset with me a few weeks ago, but I just got concerns with the halves. They're so similar. And if you're going to be conservative halves, you've at the very least, when the game's on the line, got to be making the right calls. And that's not. I'm not just pointing out Ilias. I think both halves are guilty of this. And they need to find a way. Because I feel like Gutho did as much as he could last week. But at fullback, when the game's on the line, you can only do so much. Whereas when the game was on the line last week, unfortunately, like kick out on the full and just decisions that were certain made, they've just got to find a way. They don't have to be set the world alight, these Dragon halves, but they just got to find a way to just get through the game, making the right decisions.
They need to get a win, don't they? Yeah, I was calling that game when Lockie kicked it out on the full. I've really felt for him. But it's a part of the game. He's a halfback.
Yeah.
You know, he's very lucky to be playing in the NRL because every player is,
Yeah.
and he's got an opportunity to run a team. And you know, there are some decisions that need to be made. He's got a big couple of weeks, and that's just being honest. He's got, you know, you mentioned Kyle as well. Kyle. So when I was look back at that game as well, there were 18 kicks or 17 kicks made by the Dragons. Lockie had 15 of them.
Yeah.
Now, he'd love to have 14 because he'd love to have that 15th back for sure. But Kyle only had one. That was that repeat set that Blaze Slangy just got to and knocked it dead. So Kyle needs to chip in for about 3 or 4 and help his halfback out, especially because Lockie isn't Sean Johnson. He isn't Nathan Cleary. He isn't Daly Cherry Evans.
Yeah.
You've got to chip in and take a little bit of pressure off Lockie, in my opinion.
And also,
but then Lockie's got to be better.
For sure, yeah. And I think, and also like Flano, he's not necessarily Cam Munster either. So the things that he is good at is a relatively good long kicking game, a pretty good short kicking game, and structured play. And I just think that like almost like both of them just aren't delivering what you would at least hope that they would deliver yet at the moment. Now, to be fair though, Flanagan has actually surprised me in his ability to run the ball at 6 sometimes, where I'm like, oh shit, I actually didn't actually know you were that good at that part of the game. So, maybe there is a lot more in Flanagan at 6 than we could think about, but I actually think that maybe you actually put Kyle at 7 and Lockie Ilias at 6, because it feels like that 7 on the back of Ilias's jersey is putting too much pressure on him to make the right call.
Yeah, it's
I feel like Flano might be able to handle it a little bit better.
Flano's improved out of sight in the last year and a half, but kicking, I reckon that's the next little part, and that's the part of the evolution where he can help Lockie out.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we're going to head to a break. After the break, we got Broncos v the Roosters. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Captain's Run, Broncos v the Roosters. We're going to get through this quick. How do you see this one, Scope?
Yeah, going to go the Broncos, mate. They were pretty convincing. The second game or the first round, but it was delayed after Vegas. Roosters still missing some players. Chad Townsend's been dropped to make way. I'm looking forward to seeing Hugo Savala in the halves.
Big boy.
Yeah, he's about 6'3" or 4 of the best. I think.
Yeah. He played back row, I think. When he made his debut, I think he'd come on at back row to fill in or something like that, which is for a young fella. That's really impressive. Alrighty, Sharkies v Eagles. What are we looking at?
Well, Sharkies versus Eagles. This is, two teams that are going through different circumstances that, just need a little bit of confidence. That DCE stuff still happening at Manly and there's still a lot of noise around that. And the Sharkies, they're a quality team. It just something's not quite clicking there. Maybe needs to be something tinkered around with the lineup, but I'm going to go Manly with no confidence.
With no confidence. Yeah, they're both two sides that started the year with so much promise. And look, granted, the Sea Eagles still are in a 6th place and the Sharkies are still 10th, but they started as like almost heavyweights and they've just fallen away a little bit. And it's actually, whoever wins this next game, it'll actually have a huge bearing on, whether it's panic stations or not. Like if Sharkies don't win, it's like, oh, okay, wow, like we are in a bit of a worrying situation here.
Yeah, I think it's more worrying for the Sharks if they don't win this.
For sure. Okay, Rabbitohs versus Cowboys.
Rabbitohs versus Cowboys. How hard is it to pick in the NRL?
Bro, I don't know what's like. For example, the Cowboys. Every time I say left, they go right. I say right, they go left. It's the hardest ever.
I'm gonna go the Cowboys in this one.
Okay. Eels versus Raiders.
Eels versus Raiders. Raiders. No, Zach Lomax is huge. I ran into him this morning, sent him in the boot through Coogee, and going to miss 4 weeks, unfortunately, Zachy. Huge out because he's been, even in the games that they lost, most notably the Bulldogs, he was outstanding.
Storm v Warriors.
Storm v Warriors. Storm are the team. They're my team. They had a bit of a blip against the Dragons, but they're super talented and they'll be too good for a really improved Warriors team this year.
Yeah, I think the Warriors, they're not getting enough credit for the fact that they're top 4 right now.
They'll be a pain in the ass.
Yeah,
I know that.
They just hang around and fight. They actually haven't played to their potential yet, but every game they're fighting it. Every game they're hanging in there, and I think that Fisher Harris has a lot to do with that.
For sure.
Knights v the Tigers.
Ooh, Knights with no confidence. Whole bunch of changes there. I'm going to change. Tigers. Jerome Luai's back. Yeah.
Tigers are my value as well. A bit of value there. I think they're like 260 or something like that. Bit of value. I really like what the Tigers are doing. They play they don't play your typical boring, stereotypical footy. They're a bit expansive, a bit eyes up, offload out the back, see what's happening. Like even that try that they scored against the Broncos with that dropout where it was a long dropout and it was just like, boys, let's just spin it and see what happens. And they end up scoring in the bloody corner. I like watching the Tigers play.
And, so I knew Jerome was back, and I've just had a quick look at the lineup. Jarrell Skelton, huge. Samuela Fainu, even bigger. That's what swayed me in the end because I hadn't had a look at who else had returned with Jerome for the Tigers.
And the injuries for the Knights, you've got Cogger, Schiller, Saifidi, Hetherington, and Elliott all unavailable with Crossland at half. Brayley comes in at hooker.
And they're still missing Lucas, and he was their second best play behind Kalen in the first 2 weeks.
Easy. I mean, first 2 weeks he was prepping for a smoky in the Origin arena. Now, granted, probably not going to make the bench, but at least the extended squad. All righty, we're going to head to a break. After the break, we're going to wrap up the show. Welcome back to the Captain's Run. That is another show done and dusted. And if you didn't hear the first hour and the second hour, even the third hour, you can listen to it belatedly on Apple, Spotify. You can download the SN app. Scope, what do you reckon this round of footy is going to be like? This round of footy?
Mate, just as many curveballs as have been to start the season. It's the one part that I do love. It's been so competitive and, even though we're in tipping comps, I love that I can't pick a winner.
Yeah.
Like it makes it so, you're leaving games trying to figure out what, I was so confident on on that team. The only, the consistent team now, they're sitting back, the Bulldogs, kicking the feet up, 5 from 5 on a bye. What a great start for the Doggies.
And even the Doggies, though, the Eels nearly done them. Like, you know what I mean? The Eels got the closest to beating the Doggies.
Yeah.
And so that's what's so good about this season. I mean, even, everyone was huge favourites on the Broncos last week against the Tigers. The Tigers had them rattled for the first half. And so that's what's so good about this year. Hopefully it stays like that. I did say earlier in the show, one unique thing about this year is I feel like every big signing has killed it. Like every big signing has been quite good.
Yep.
There's been very, very few, maybe one-ish dud, if anything. Like there's been, most signings have been good.
Even a couple of really undercover, sneaky young boys like Savelio Tamale from...
Mate, gun.
He had all this hype in New South Wales Cup. Is it going to translate to first grade? It has.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then you got guys like Iongi, who was in New South Wales Cup, killing it for many years. He's been Para Eels. One of their best.
Yeah, good shout.
One of their best. So make sure to download the SN app. And Horo?
I'll tell you what I am looking forward to. Friday night, me and Sugar will be calling, we'll go the Michelle Pfeiffer, run home, and we'll be calling the Dragons versus Titans game. So me and Sugar have got a little friendly wager happening.
Okay.
I've got the Titans to be finishing above the Roosters on the ladder at the end of the season. We did that before a ball was kicked at the start of the year, and I had a nice 4-point swing last week when the Titans beat the Roosters.
Okay, all right. So make sure to tune. Also, I'll be joining Sugar on the run home tomorrow as well on SEN. But as always, thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next week.